everyone. Welcome to another awesome day of FileMaker training. I am invisibly stealthy. There I am. I'm Richard Carlton, creator of FMTrain.tv. Today has been an epic busy day for a Monday. Not bad, just like it's like doing air traffic control at JFK or LA. I flew through the LAX area last week. Kind of nuts. And I was a student pilot, if you can believe that. I'm an instructor, but when I was flying the King Air, it's a twin-engine turboprop, I was a student getting schooled. It was awesome. So anyway, welcome to some day of FileMaker training. If you go to the fmtraining.website, today is going to be a conversation on script triggers. Tomorrow, transient notifications and any other additional script trigger actions. So we're going to be doing that today. It's basically, it's for beginners about script triggers. So I know we talked about this before, probably 6 months ago. It's a pretty high-end topic. Today's conversation, for those of you wondering about this, is on script triggers, and mostly for beginners. So I really want, too bad Jess isn't here. All of you people here are like Kung Fu ninjas. Do any of you have any upfront, if you're on YouTube, Twitch, Discord, any of you have questions about script triggers? Even if it's a senior question, at least I would know about it. If you have a question about script triggers, let me know, because that would be really useful to have that data at least out in front of me so I can keep an eye on it. So, okay, I'm going to run this update right now just because. So this is the security update that came out last week. Claris did a little bit more than just a pure security update. They also created a couple new bugs in it. So just keep that in mind. So far, the bugs are kind of innocuous, but you might want to keep an older copy. Like, if you go to this computer, I've got FileMaker 19.6 on it or whatever. Let's see, I have a couple of different FileMakers on here. This is 20.3.2 has a security update. There's a couple of minor bugs that they, that's always, 2 steps forward, 1 step back kind of deal. So let's talk about the help menu. If I go into here, FileMaker Pro help, and I talk about script triggers. Script triggers come in 2 flavors, pre-triggers and post-triggers. Margaret, I'm going to count on your intervention here a little bit to help me, right? Let me see about the script trigger, setting script triggers for objects. This is what, setting script triggers right here. So this is the deal. You got object-based script triggers, which are attached to an object on the layout, a specific object on a specific layout, okay? If you attach to an object on layout, it won't be attached to any other object. Even if you have the same object on 5 layouts, it doesn't auto-populate through all the layouts. It's on this specific layout, okay? Then you have layout-based script triggers, which apply to the entire layout, right? Like if you load a new record, which is this opening a kind of a, if you toggle a record, you open a record, that's not really a object level item, it's a whole layout level item. Makes sense, right? And then you have some file options here. So the what we call startup script, we always have this term called startup script we use. What's your startup script? Well, startup script is actually used to be what this was called back in the old days. It was a script trigger that was like the script that would be run on startup. And then what they did is Claris renamed it to not startup script, it's on first window open, okay? Makes sense? So on the first window that you open for your solution, it'll fire a script, effectively your startup script. It's easier to think of it that way because it's what users will run when they open it during startup, okay?
Is there a limit on what objects you can attach script triggers to?
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the obvious things you want to attach a script trigger to is a field. And we're going to actually build this one today together today with us. We're going to build a field and we're going to do modern validation with a field, okay? And it comes in a couple different flavors or whatever, but you get this idea, okay? Fields, you could do a trigger on a button, but a button itself, when you push it, is a trigger, so that doesn't make sense. Attaching it to a layout as you load a new record, right? Like I have a solution, you've seen it before, where as I load a record, like I have this one where I would organize all my radio controlled aircraft because I was a professional pilot doing that at one point. I quit doing that and I fly helicopters. But the point is that there were variations in the aircraft to a degree that I had different layouts for the 4 different kinds of aircraft: gas airplane, electric airplane, gas helicopter, electric helicopter, okay? And so the layouts were all very similar, but different. And so as I would open a record, or a record would load, it would say, what kind of aircraft is this? And it would jump to one of the 4 layouts, and the layouts were very close to each other. And so you couldn't even tell you jumped to a layout because it happened so fast, and everything was lined up from layout to layout except for the couple fields that changed, right? So this is super Awesome right there. That's a great one right there, right?
Okay, then a follow-up question. Can you attach script triggers to portals or tabs?
And so the question is yes, and why? And it gets back to this conversation. If I go back over here, I'm going to go backwards. Where it says actions that don't activate script triggers. So let's talk about this. So this is, I mean, this is kind of like what we should talk about at the end of the show versus the beginning of the show. But there are some things that don't trigger a script trigger. So something about spell checking, whatever. Bulk operations. Okay, bulk operations. So the replace command in FileMaker. So if I go to, I really don't want to run that solution. Let me go to the bomb. Can I go to a bomb? Okay. So if I'm in FileMaker here, I'm in this parts database. It doesn't matter. There's 3,000 records in here of whatever widget. Okay. If I go to record and I do a bulk operation, replace and relookup. Okay. Those won't generally fire a trigger. Okay. If you have a script that you fire. Now scripts can, so bulk operation, whether you run it by a script or you run it manually, won't fire a trigger. An import command won't fire a trigger. An export command won't fire a trigger. But if you have a loop, say look at the replace command, right? What is a replace command? It allows you to put some data, like if I decide, and this is really stupid. Oh no. So here's a part over here. Say that we decide that there's going to be some sort of value-added tax rate. And for whatever reason, we're going to hard set it into the database and all 2003 parts, or say only whatever the found set is. Say I'm going to omit a bunch of records over here. So I omit a bunch of records. So all these records that we have right here, 1,987 of these, we're going to set the standard tax rate to. I can come here. I'm selected in that field. I go records. I go replace. It allows me just to push that value in there. If I push that in there and there happens to be an unmodified trigger on there, it's not going to fire the unmodified trigger. You see what I'm saying? This is a bulk operation to carpet bomb 0.05 into this field for all these records, right? If I do it, it's done already. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So even some of these, so that, see, that's all in there now. It's all consistent. Okay, if I flip the found set to this 16 that we don't have, it's not in there. So that's a bulk operation. If your script, however, you write a script that says loop, and then at the bottom of the script says go to next record. So I'm going to write a script that loops through the 2,000 records. Okay, and it gets to that, and it sets it with a set field command. That will fire the trigger, because it's not a bulk operation. The script itself has a bulkiness kind of capability, but you're not running a single FileMaker command that's a bulk operation. That makes sense? So,
yeah, it's an interesting distinction.
well, because listen, when you use a bunch of little Lego pieces to build a big Lego thing, the little Lego pieces are individual. But if you had like this giant bulk operation, it's like a nuclear weapon. I always call replace commands, they're nukes inside your database. They're dangerous as hell. I've wiped out my own database a couple of times by doing a replace in the wrong spot or scripting it in such a way that it wasn't super safe, and I ended up doing a replace in the wrong spot or on the wrong records, and I have to restore from a backup. The other thing with bulk operations, there's no undo for them, right? So if you write your own script that does a loop, you give more precise control. It's easier to say if and this and all those sorts of conditions in there. But then if you have, there's a lot of times in the database, I'm just going to open up, here is a database, okay? If I go up here to layouts, I have layouts that have names on them, right? And if I have layout that says something about maintenance, it's almost all the other layouts that are in here. But I have maintenance layouts that have no triggers on them. So when you have a script that's going to do a bunch of stuff, you might want to have it jump to the maintenance layout, which has no triggers that you might accidentally step on. This is this idea of stepping on a landmine and blowing yourself up. If you have a script that's running, whether you're in here doing stuff or the script is in here doing stuff really fast, either one of those can trigger a landmine, a script trigger, okay? And it might do things you don't expect. So if you want to make sure that doesn't happen, we're on the data entry screen or a screen that's attached to a specific table occurrence. we would have a matching maintenance one. In maintenance, that would be, the contact, whatever. And I don't know if it's even in here or not, but you see estimate line items, estimate invoice. These are a way to go in here, do maintenance. If that layout's ugly, oh, is that ugly? So ugly. We don't care because the user will never see it. You're going to come here, you're going to do your set fields, you can do what you need to do. That way you don't trigger any script triggers, and then you're going to go back. How do you know where the script triggers are at? You go to manage layout in terms of layout triggers. So we got all the little sparkly laser things on here. Those all have.
That's what that means?
Yes. Yes.
So that exclusively means there are script triggers on that layout. Little like red.
And they could be innocuous or whatever, but they're on that layout. Okay. Well, they're on the. Yeah, they're somehow on the layout. I don't know that it's a layout one or it's an object one, but if you go that layout and do, you might step on one. Okay. And maybe that's on purpose, but if you're writing a script that does something, say like you come back after a year working a solution, customer calls you back, or you internally come back and they say, hey, can you add this thing that does this thing? Build this report, do this other stuff. If you code it and it's doing stuff on the data entry screen where the user normally hangs out, and you're jumping around and editing data and clicking and stuff, you could trigger unexpected problems. So just so your phone doesn't ring, we have the magical phone. This is the magical phone your customers will call. If you blow it too badly, they're going to call and say, oh, you didn't really bug test your stuff. You're not a very good developer, right? And so you want to avoid those phone calls. To do that, you will send your script to a maintenance layout where it will do its work and then it will come back. Make sense?
I did not realize that's what maintenance layouts were for.
There you go. Something new. You learn something new every day. A day is wasted if you don't learn anything new. Do we have any questions? Could you replace command with an open transaction loop? Okay, yeah, I'm not going to get into transactions because I don't consider them a beginning activity. And you have to go in and see what the limitations are. Yeah, David, it's a more advanced question. I mean, off the top of my head, David, once again, yeah, and the problem with the open transact, it's a script step as opposed to the trigger, which is totally different. We have that coming up, right, Calvin, Margaret? We're going to have that Calvin conversation with the on transaction trigger. We're not going to, it's an advanced for sure. And it has actually,
we have that, we have audit stuff. Is that related to the audit logs stuff?
Yes, it's exactly what that is. All right, so let's take a look at this real quick. So I'm going to go into 301. I'm going to tell it to open it right now. I'm going to go to layout mode, and I'm going to put a trigger on this. So Larry, the Marine, says he thinks that those little sparkly things are indications that it's a layout trigger, not an object trigger. If so, that sucks because then you really have no way of looking at a layout list and knowing if there's any triggers on it at all. That's not good. I really hope they didn't do it that way. Thing is, some of the things that last week we ran into, Claris had changed some things, and like sometimes they change little things and they don't even let us know, right? So let's do a on object set script trigger. So on object, let's say if they enter the phone number there, we're going to say something like, let's just create a beepity beep beep. We'll call it beep, beep. All right, I got a beep. I hit OK, hit OK, hit OK. I got a browse mode. If I click, I create a new record. If I click on phone, can you folks hear that? Do you hear the beep? It beeped, okay? So the rub is at this layout here, which is the 301 below the QB one. So what we're going to do is going to go back to layout, manage layouts. I'm going to close this and then refresh it because sometimes stuff doesn't get refreshed. Go to layouts. 301. Oh, it's not there. Larry, get a gold star. That's not good.
That's a little unfortunate. So the little red flashy thing means only layout.
A layout-based trigger. Yeah, and the problem is that it doesn't really. I guess you could run a monkey bread function to tell you if there was a trigger on there or something, but that's why we have these maintenance layouts where I explicitly never put. Well, of course, now there's one over here. There shouldn't be triggers. We create these so there's no triggers on them, right? I'm not sure why there's a trigger down here on this. Obviously for a reason, but
we have some questions.
Let's go questions. So. Yep.
Okay, so is it on the layout and or in fields on the layout? I think that was referring to the layout icon. Yeah, which we just answered. Jessie has an interesting experience with script triggers. It's mostly dealing, she she's mostly dealt with triggers that are floating around that people before her sprinkled everywhere, and then discovering by trial by fire
Yeah, I know this sucks.
they
So
exist.
can we write this up for Monkey Bread? How can we tell if there is a trigger on a layout at all? That's one. Two, Jess, this is where here's the deal, Jess. So Jesse has this great comment. I'm going to bring this up on Discord over here. This is super, super great. Okay, so this show is already going a different direction than I thought it would. So if I come down here, Jess has this question right here. Mostly, I am dealing with triggers that people. This is the landmine thing. That's what Jesse. She's walking around getting blown up by landmines. So what you do is either you can try to find a solution to triage all the landmines, or you can build a new city or a new planet or a new something where there are no landmines, right? So what we're saying in the script is that you're going to go to a layout where you know there are no landmines and do your work and then come back. So if you're trying to work on user interaction and they're running into triggers, yeah, I get that. I understand that, but that's kind of hard. You're saying that they have to walk through the field, so you need to figure out where all the landmines are at, right? But if you have a script and you're running a new script and you don't want to inadvertently step on anything, then just transport yourself to the other layout, do your work, and then come back. And you'll know that layout doesn't have any, it'll be actually faster performance because the layout won't have extra objects on it. It'll be slimmed down. It should be black and white, almost no color on it, like a list view or a table view. Simple, simple, simple. No unstored calculations on it unless you need one, right? No summary fields on it. Trim that thing down, okay? That'll give you the maximum performance for your script, right? Yeah. So some people call them dev layouts. I call them maintenance layouts, where we're performing Well, we perform maintenance sometimes on it, right? It's like the special maintenance conduits, in a subway. They have the little secret doors, and you can go down and work on the subway and stuff. Yeah, that's kind of what we're doing, right? So you call them whatever you want to call them. Do them dev layouts. But some of my own developers call them dev. It's just different vernacular. All right, cool. Other questions? There's a trigger to indicate on each object that has one attached. Yeah, assuming you can see it, right? So if you're over here in layout mode and you happen to notice a little red right there, the little
There you go.
explosive thing, it's basically that's a laser. That's not what that is, a little baby landmine there waiting to go off on you. Little firecracker kind of thing. All right, questions?
Yes, we have one from David Angel.
Mm-hmm.
The order of the script trigger events is the order that is evaluated.
Yeah, so let's go back to help. Let's pivot back to help. This is a really good topic. This is kind of where I thought we'd be. Okay, let me get rid of that. Well, let's just go through this real quick. So only direct ops should activate triggers. Changes made to a layout in one field will not activate trigger. Okay, yeah. Changes made to a field from the show dialog script step will not activate. So they've actually carved out a couple exceptions. Yeah, so this is a good one right here. So this goes back to setting your stuff. Remember, set field is a little interesting because it bypasses some items in FileMaker. Like, for example, when you do a set field command, you don't have to really be clicked into the field to do the edit. If you do an insert command, like insert text, you have to tell FileMaker, go to that field, go into that specific field, then insert the text. That's kind of how that works, right? Historically, back in the old days, there was no set field command. We had to target the field, then insert stuff into there, okay? So because of that, set field doesn't trip everything. Just got to be, it's one of those things you got to test and play with. That being said, the answer to the big question is the way these evaluate is kind of this from the highest level position all the way to the lowest level position. So the way in fact, we can play with this, but do we want to cover pre and post processing? We just want to cover the order of operation first. Mark, you want to cover order of operation? I guess we could do that.
Yeah, order of operations, I think.
Okay, so I'm going to open this file up. What this file is going to do is it's going to, every trigger it runs into is throwing a dialog to alert you that it's firing, okay? So remember, if we double click and we open something, it's going to be on first window open, okay? But all the triggers that can be set have been set, so you're going to see all of them kind of fire. So 1, 2, 3, I'm going to double click, open it up. So here is, forget this stuff down here. We don't care about this. We don't care about that. This is this demo. On first, that's the startup script. On first window open, right? First one that fires, okay? So this is the order of operation, right? It's the whole thing about like math where division, multiplication happen before adding and subtracting, that whole thing, right? That kind of deal. There's a fundamental order of operation. Now, the second one that would fire probably should be on window open. So you can have on first window open, you can also have a trigger that runs every time a window is opened. Even if the solution is already open and you pop a new window, it can fire a trigger. I almost never use that, but could be. So on window open, right? So if I open 5 windows at the same layout, it's going to go ding, 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 ding each time, right? Now, after the window's open, it's going to go to a layout. I'm just guessing what it's going to do. It's going to go to a layout and load a layout. So it should be something about going and loading a layout. On layout enter. That's what they call it, okay? So you've entered a layout. Now, the next thing that happens after you enter the layout is it loads a record, right? It always loads a record. So if it loads a record, then we're going to get that.
Oh, so it decides that you're in browse mode before it acknowledges the record?
There's a record load. There we go. So I was off by 1, right? See how that is? So you go back and do this, and you're like, oh. And then on layout size change. Because for it, it's the first time it's ever seen it. Now, if I move the window down, nothing happens. If I move it like this, that's the layout size change. Not so interesting for Pro, but for Go, it's how you detect a rotation on the iPhone or iPad, right? 1, 2, I'm going to let go. 1, 2, 3. Now, normally what we would do is we'd have layout specific to Go, right? A layout for Go or iPhone or iPad or whatever. So you wouldn't want to run this on your Mac Windows layout, right? Whatever. All right, questions?
Nope. At the moment, I think we are all processing the order of operations.
So order of operations. So now I'm going to, now notice, okay, let's try a new window here. Let's just do that new front. So I'm going to take a new window. Now this could be from a script step, but we're going to do it manually. If I pop this, it's going to spawn a new window. It's going to enter a mode on that window, Files mode, browser, whatever, but we're already in browse mode, so it'll be browse mode, but it'll trigger the on mode change or on mode, whatever that is. So window, mode, or layout, mode, then record. So it'll be like 4. That's by one deal right here. It's going to be like 5 triggers. 1, 2, 3, go. On window open, not on first window. Remember, that's the first window is a startup script. So this is that other one, okay? These are file options, right? I'll pop these open here momentarily. On window open, on layout enter, on probably the mode one right here, right? On mode enter, okay? And on record load. And then size change, right? Now, if I flip a record, 1, 2, 3, on record load. Nothing else happened. Interesting. Well, you got that part of it. So let's take a look at where you access these. So we have file-based, Claris calls them file-based, object-based, layout-based. You got objects-based, layout-based, file options. And really, there's a Windows. Well, file options are you set in the window, but see, and there's window transaction. Where's the on timer? Well, there's one that you turn on with a script. This gets back to me. Okay.
Do you like command find timer? Yeah. Install on timer script step.
It's only mentioned down here at the bottom. See, this
has its own link.
All right. Well, if I had written the documentation, it would be on here. So what you have, this talks about the timing. So in here, up here was the whether they're object based or layout based, and then you had file based, and there's one that's script based. Here's the timing of them, the way they execute. On window first, we saw this. There we go. There we go. There we go. There we go. On view change, if you go from data entry mode to or form mode to list view to table view, any of those you do, that'll be an on view change. Okay. Then after you do that, after it evaluates all these, then it's going to evaluate the object. So it's if you think about an object, so I'm going to wave my hands at everyone here. So you're going to have a mouse. Not just leave out. Remind me to come back to Go. This largely follows Go, but kind of not really. So when you're programming as a professional programmer and you do controls, you can put your mouse over an object and you have hovering over the object, and there's all sorts of little states. You have press down and press up and all these other things. So these are the things that we that same kind of idea. So here I am, I'm on this, and say like there's that little 3D fill right there. So if I'm going to press down on that, say that's a field, I click, okay? So the first thing that's going to happen is on object enter, and you see it down right there. See on the screen right there? Right there. On object enter. Okay. So for sure it fires on object. You've entered the object. Okay. Does it work with WebViewer? I don't know, but you'll have to test that. WebViewers always behave a little different. Okay. Then you have on object keystroke. So if you're on the object, in the object, and you type a letter, we've talked about this before, like, I only want to have numbers in there. And I don't want it to, as people type alpha characters, A, B, C, D, F, G, I want it to just get rid of those. I don't want them even to be seen on screen. That's how you do that. So you have on object keystroke, and you can test whether it's a allowed character or not, okay? And then you can interrupt them from putting other stuff in there. Then you have, so on object keystroke, then you have, and then what happens then is there's also on layout keystroke. So say you're on a layout, but you're not clicked anywhere, right? Or you're clicked in a field, it doesn't matter. If you're on a layout and that window's active and you type a letter on your keyboard, layout keystroke. So like you're on a window, like we have the cars style window. Remember BVA? They got stuck on a cars style window. I sent them an email, look for the checkbox. They didn't read my email. They got stuck on a cars style window. They didn't know how to get out. They pulled the plug out of the back of the computer. I love these people. They're helicopter people. I love them. On layout keystroke, if we're on that car style window, we detect him pressing the escape key. We leave. That's where the layout keystroke comes in, right? You can detect someone's trying to beat the crap out of the escape key to get out, right? That's a good one. Save that one in your brain. Layout keystroke. On gesture tap only works at this point if you have a iOS device and it can detect that you have a one finger, one tap, double tap, triple tap, I think, and then you have a two finger tap. There's a couple different taps it does. You can play with it. It doesn't do everything you'd like it to do. It'd be great if it could do swipe left, swipe right, do all this stuff. It's pretty limited, but it does it. Okay, gesture tap, AV player. We're not going to talk about playing videos and movies through your mobile device. It's, I think, mostly a iOS thing right there. On external command receive, that's another iOS thing. On panel switch, there we go. So what kind of panels are on a FileMaker layout, Margaret? There's two kinds of panels that are there. Ken says tabs and slides, correct, Ola. Margaret, feel free to throw their comments in here because I haven't been looking at that.
Yeah, tab control and slider. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's a tab control or a slide control. Within a tab control, there are tab panels. Within a slide control, there are slide panels. If you attach those objects and you switch a panel, you fire this, okay? Keep that in mind. On object modify. So we can read up on what that does, but basically, this is where you type something in here. On object, see, I think what happens on object modify, we're going to play with this a little bit. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to move this. It's going to complain. Oh, it didn't complain. That's interesting. Okay, on object enter. Okay, if I type the letter A, it's an on object keystroke and probably a layout keystroke too, right? Yeah, see, if you type a letter, both of them fire if you have them turned on. See, this is a demo file. They're all turned on, right? So you're seeing what happens. Now, I hit OK. Object modify is there. We modify the object. If I type B, on object keystroke, layout keystroke, on object modify, okay? So what happens is that you have, what is the difference between modify and, let's go back up here and look at these. On object key, so whenever you have a keystroke, these are, so let's talk about pre and post triggers, very important, okay? A trigger will either activate before the thing that fired it actually does anything. It's kind of a backwards thing, but like if I'm in a field and I activate this for a field, I type the letter A, because on object keystroke and on layout keystroke both are pre-triggers. FileMaker goes, hey, Richard, and I go, what? And it goes, well, the user just pressed the letter A, and should we allow that to go through? That's what a before processing is, okay? Now you can do a bunch of script stuff with a script, but if you pass back a 0 on the script result, 0 be no, one is bark once for yes, yes, and 2 for no. A 1 is that good, you can keep going, or 0 is please stop the user. We don't want them to click in that field with that letter. It's not approved. Maybe we only want numbers or something. If it's after the processing, it's like, hey, Richard. I go, what? It's like the user did this. Just an FYI, baby. Well, I don't want them to do that. Tough. We did it already. It's done. Okay. Very valuable that you can do both of these. Okay. But you can't, but they're kind of, when Claris built this, they kind of met with the developers and they said, what's more useful? Because kind of really doing the after the fact keystroke is like, because doing it, running the script is valuable, but sometimes you want to stop what the user was doing, like interrupt it. Like on the tab switch, doing a tab switch might be good before they switch to tab. What if they're doing data entry on a tab, Margaret, and they don't do the data entry complete, and they're going to try to jump to the next tab? It's like, oh, timeout. You haven't finished what you were doing. So, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I haven't looked at it, but on, oh, it is. Okay, I was going to scroll down and see it, but it's right here. That's another good one. Okay. Some of these on object modify is after the fact. So we've modified it after the fact. So if I click on object modify, let's read about this. Performs when the value associated with the object change result. User types an object. User clicks an object. So keep in mind the click is with the mouse. That's not a keystroke, right? Remember, we have the keystroke. They're very similar. They both detected the typing in there, right? But the object modify, I think the user clicks in there. Oh, cause the value to change. So let me try. Let me come back over here. Let me click. Okay. These are the ones when you're leaving, you're saving the data. Okay. So when you're saving the data, there's a sequence of things that go as it's saved, it's committed. Save it, validate, saved, and committed. When we say validate, we mean the field definition, the validate tab, which I tell you everyone don't use it because it sucks, but it's where that would occur, if that makes sense in the scheme of things. When you type into a field, before there were ever script triggers, think about this. Before there were ever a script trigger, we've been training on this for a long time. You type it in a field, then you click out, and then FileMaker takes the data and it saves it, it commits it, and it sends it to the server. There's about 3 or 4 or 5 things that happen at least, okay? If you're editing a record, it's going to release the record, it's going to save it to the server, release the record, all these things happen. So what Claris did is they put little attachment points where we could attach a script when they got to those spots. One of the first things it does after you're edit a field and then you click out is it runs the validation that we tell you not to use. Now, using it as a script trigger and running your own script to validate, awesome. That's awesome because you run a script to do the validation. But it's firing where it would have done that built-in validation. Once again, I'm talking about, I'm going to go field definitions. If I'm in a field and I come over here and I say, auto enter is great, validation, don't use it, ever, okay? Because it's whenever you use it, it's all great, and then your customers are going to complain. Trust me on this, I'm not going to get into it. But that trigger, whenever FileMaker would have validated this anyway, like say I say, make sure it's not empty and it's blah, 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 right? Okay. Or it's a unique value. Okay. Well, at the time it would evaluate that is the same time when it fires that script trigger, the onValidate, right? Makes sense? Margaret, did that make sense what I'm saying?
Yes, that made sense what you're saying.
And onValidate is before processing. So it's like if you tell it to not do it, right? To not do to bail, it's not going to allow you to exit the field, right? Once again, we're back to this. If validation fails, you don't want to exit. That's the way the built-in validation works. But if you write your own validation, you can write an intelligent, smart, thoughtful validation that explains how things like hot air balloon Ken. Hey, Richard, I'm sorry. You tried to register this pilot, but we cannot validate him because he's a known terrorist and he might fly a balloon into a building and blow everyone up. You can't do that validation with this one. You can't. There's no approved pilot terrorist option in here at all. But if you're writing your own scripts, you could do it. Absolutely. Does this guy have an FAA or a registered pilot? Is he on the do not fly list? You do all these checks with an API. Check, 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 check. Good. You can totally do it.
I have a fun question for you because I remember this being a hot topic of discussion, I think the last time we covered this. So what is the difference between on object save and on record commit?
So on object validate is the one where it's going to validate and either yes or no. So save and exit are the two. There's a subtle funkiness in here. Do we want to go through this? Jesse, do you know the difference in these? Does anyone care to go through this? Because I have to read it to remember where this is, what the issue is with these. I think the save is the one that does, it fires before, but it doesn't allow you to actually cancel it or something. Let's look at this.
There's something to do with save being appropriate for local files.
Nah, no, it's not a local server
Yeah,
hosted
Jesse
thing.
says that they are grossly unfamiliar with both of those. So
Okay, yeah. So let's just go through these, and I'll see if you go to my paid. Okay, back up. This broadcast is brought to you by FMTraining.tv, where every day you can watch great FileMaker training. Just visit FMTraining.tv. So in the training in here, I already have a video where I did this 2 or 3 years ago, where I went through these in gloriously great detail. So if you want to support the channel, the problem is that I don't use it every day, so I tend to forget. I just know that there was a little bit of a funkiness with it. And the issue is, let's go to so object save. So object save happens before on object save and then on object exit. Okay. So this is where you would want to, here's the deal. If you're doing a validation, I think on validation is probably the best place to do a validation because you're exiting and you can bail out. But sometimes you don't want to validate until you're done with like, say you have 5 fields in your, see here, this is where it gets into validation. So if you have 5 fields you're inputting on your screen on this little pop-up dialog or whatever, not a dialog, but a little pop-up card window or something, and you're validating, do you want to validate every time someone touches the keyboard? That's kind of processor intensive, kind of a pain in the ass. But like if you're looking for the escape key, it makes sense, right? But sometimes you want to validate when you've completed the data for that one field, or you want to validate when they have finished doing data entry on all 5 fields. That's an important thing to think about, right? And so on validate is going to be when that on validate, okay, object, I'm going to type. Okay, so it's doing, I'm modifying some stuff. Now I'm going to tab. I'm going to press the tab key. So I'm not going to save. I'm going to exit the object. I'm going to exit the object on a validate on object. So I don't think the validate will fire here. Okay, I'm in here. 1, 2, 3. I'm at the tab. 1, 2, 3. On object keystroke, on layout keystroke, right? Because that's a tab key. On object validate, on object save, on object exit. Whoa, whoa, whoa. I want to go to layout mode. It's giving me a million dialogues. All right. So if I go to the tab order, 2, 3, 4. So what I'm going to do here is on this tab here, I'm going to just, on this one here, I'm going to go script triggers, and I'm going to turn on, see, they're all on, right? So I'm going to turn them all off over here, okay? I just want them all off on that. So I don't, that doesn't, then this one here, object, oh, and then I'm going to go to the layout ones. I don't need the layout ones. Layout, setup, I'm going to turn off the layout triggers just for the moment. I'm screwing this file up, but that's fine. On record load, on record commit, on whatever, all the gesture chaps. I'm gonna turn all these off. So I just want to focus on this field level, object level, validation savey stuff, okay? Because all of them are off on the layout. This one doesn't have any off. And this one here, I'm gonna say on script triggers on this one will be on object enter, keystroke, object save, validate, exit. Perfect. So that's what we're gonna play with right here, okay? Browse mode. Okay, nothing happened. Click in here on object enter. Great. So this is more like just what you would do if you were doing validation, right? So we're in here. I type a letter. We got a keystroke. Object modify. Another letter. Object keystroke modify. Tab on object keystroke on object validate. So it will validate as you jump records. Then object save. Object exit. Okay. So let's go back over here on object, on layout, on record load, on record commit. See, there's that commit. That's where you would so that might be, but that's the whole record on the layout, right? But if you had a card style window, you're doing, so this is where you have to play with this, right? Let's get back over here to this, the difference between the save and the exit. So you have these 3 to play with: on object validate, on object save, on object exit. So validate is a pre, exit is a pre. So so it basically still saves, but it doesn't allow you to really exit it for whatever reason, right? You have to find the one that's going to give you the best behavior. Let's just take a look at this one again. On object save, this performs a script after the object has been validated and saved, but before the field has been exited, okay? Results, compatibility, notes. The script trigger activates only when the selected field data has been changed. See, that's kind of a big one, Okay. So this trigger is if someone changes the data. Say like, and it makes perfect sense. Say that you're going to do a validation, but it's kind of a soft validation. It's like, hey, Richard, this person wants to do hot air balloon Ken. He wants to learn how to fly hot air balloon. We don't think he's a terrorist, but we're not really sure who he is. Would you like to proceed anyway? Yes or no? It's up to the person doing the registration. Ken says, yeah, I trust this guy. How much trouble can you get into with a hot air balloon? So then something happens later where you're tabbing through that same window again, and you haven't changed it. Do you want it to present the same dialogue again? Well, he had already approved the override before. Do you want it to interrogate the person again, saying, hey, we're not sure who this person is. Do you want to allow him to go through? There's no point. You'd want it to do that if you change the data. So that right there is like kind of the operative deal with that one. So I'm going to go backwards. Object save. Object exit. Okay, this one's got a lot. Performs a script before an object is exited as a result of the following. The user tabs away from the object. User clicks a different object. The script attempts to make a different object to be the active script. Oh, so script fires it. User requests a dialog box that causes the thing to be exited. Fine. User attempts to move between rows in the object and a portal. Right. User attempts to move between repetitions of a repeating field. Boo. Who's using repeating fields? Okay. Results. Blah blah blah. Here's all the notes. The best part, some of the help down here, and if you ever have great test questions, is this stuff in the notes. And in FileMaker Web Director script trigger will not activate when assigned to a web viewer. There's an outlier. Trigger will activate regardless of how the object is formatted.
I can't imagine what sort of formatting would affect a trigger activation.
I'm in here trying to think about where that might be a thing, because obviously, see, if it says this, it will activate.
That means that's the case.
That means that somewhere else it's a thing, right? Somewhere else, if it's formatted, okay, whatever. If an object is set to not allow entry, the script can only be triggered if the object, okay, whatever. That's where you don't allow entry into it, but you set it with a script step. On object, the on object enter script trigger, object trigger keystroke can be activated, can or cannot? Can be activated when assigned to summary fields and okay, so this gets into putting triggers on fields that you're not going to validate, right? Because you've already written a function that's going to deliver data. You can't validate a calculation, right? Because it's not like, hey, this is wrong. Go back and change it, right? So whatever, figure that one out. Clicking into a different portal row. Yep, that's interesting. Play with that. Scrolling does not make the active object active, does not activate the script trigger. When on will not activate from a portal in find mode. So this is where
do triggers ordinarily activate in find mode?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like if you're doing a find on fields that you normally have a validate on, and then you do a find on them, you want to make sure that you're not tripping. So in your code, you can tell what mode you're in, right? What mode you're in. So if in the event, just as a side note for everyone, if you're in find mode and you accidentally fire a trigger at the whatever script is calling it, if the easiest thing is just to have it be ignored in find mode, just put a top of the line saying if the current mode is find mode, whether that's mode 2 or whatever. There's like find mode, browse mode, preview, right? Whatever the 4 modes are: preview, browse, find, layout. There's a number for each of these. You just test for that. Where's the on object save? Let's go back to save again. This is the one with the double hanging whammy on it. So this is the save, but before the other result. You can use the exit script step when triggering a script to return true or false. True, the event that triggered the script proceeds. False, the event that triggered the script is canceled, but the object is saved, and the field that was active before the event triggered still remains active. So it's weird. This is the one that's kind of a funky one. It saves it, but you don't exit, don't leave, which is kind of weird. So this one is that you have to play with, okay? Watch the video, watch my paid training. It's in there, cover it in better detail with diagram and stuff. So we're past our time allotment right here. Yeah. I found on mode exit when triggering leaving find mode, but that's a layout calculation on object. Okay, great. Yeah, triggering action won't happen in find. Larry says that. Okay, object before and after. Great. Yep. All right, cool. So tomorrow, I know it's an hour, but this there's no way you can cover this even in 2 hours because there's really the on window timer thing too. And so, which is funky. And it wasn't even on the list, which is bizarre. Yeah. So what we're going to do tomorrow is we're going to cover, the other day we talked about APIs that break because the API changes. So Kyle, if he remembers to come here, Margaret will try to remind him. We'll be doing a live stream and covering the notifications, what we call transient notifications with JavaScript and web viewers. There's a version 2 of the file. That code was broke. Margaret was in the middle of that. Margaret actually fixed it for BVA because it was still working, but it wouldn't display correctly. And so Kyle made an update to that. So the other day we made a PayPal update to the API. This is a transit notification update. Once again, I am personally at a personal level concerned that these break and that require some level of massage and repairing to make them correct and whole again. I really hate the fact that a year or two goes by and some of your hard work kind of breaks, pops the balloon, and it goes away. So that makes me nervous. I don't like that. And it's a thing with APIs. And even when they first introduced APIs, you shouldn't use APIs unless you're going to have an ongoing budget to repair them when they break. Anything else, Margaret, on your end? Where are we at?
No, people are saying this has been an extremely informative live stream. We are happy to help.
That's it, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
Got a report of an individual up here who may be a FileMaker license. Well, it's potentially expired. Look at the back of that car right there. Looks like the FileMaker license has expired. Sir, I need you to step out of the vehicle. Sir, step out of the vehicle. Sir.